Now, there are two major issues we are going to canvass for you this morning with my guests, and these are the developments in the media scene since the Akufo-Addo regime began, and also the disturbing issue that has gained international prominence. We saw the BBC reporting as well, and Ghana being placed in, among only one other country as worsening the situation of its environment and putting the lives of its citizens at risk. I'm talking about the rosewood illegal exports, felling and export that is going on. Over 300 million worth of that wood has been exported out of this country using documents that are procured from officials. They don't fake them. Procure them from officials, and they go out of this country. So while there is a ban, this is what is going on. How exactly does that happen? All right, so we'll look at all of these, and we'll also be joined by an officer of the Bank of Ghana, a director of the Bank of Ghana. So we look briefly at the matter of the microfinance entities and other financial institutions and what has happened. So I understand that we can begin briefly with that before we go into the other matters that we intend to canvass for you this morning. Thank you very much for joining us from the Bank of Ghana, Elliot Amwako, Deputy Director, Banking Supervision Department. Thank you for joining us, sir. Hello, is Elliot on the line?
Yes, please.
Good.
Thank you.
Right.
For having me.
Right. So yesterday you brought out this information about 23 more microfinance and financial institutions that have been hit by whose licenses have been revoked. This is part of the general cleanup in the sector, not so?
Yes, Samson. Thank you once again for having me. Just as we put out yesterday in a very detailed press release, the licenses of 23 savings and 23 institutions made up of savings and loans and finance houses, and 2 other institutions were revoked.
Right.
This has been part of the general cleanup that we have indicated to the public that we're undertaking.
Is there a reason they were not part of the 386 that you revoked their licenses in June? Was it in June? Yeah.
Yes, and specifically the reasons would be that we have undertaken these exercises in sectors. If you're aware, the financial system, just in terms of the banking system, we have 3 separate subsectors. We have the major banks, and then we have the savings and loans and finance house subsector, and then we have the microfinance subsector. So the earlier exercises had to do with the banks, and then we moved on to the microfinance, and then now we are dealing with the middle tier, which is the savings and loans and finance houses. So that was why they were not part of it, because we were dealing with the separate sectors at the time.
So the biggest reason or the major reason you give is that these institutions are not solvent, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Solvent. They are insolvent, and that is the legal basis for revoking their licenses. For an institution to continue to operate within the banking space, it has to demonstrate adequate capital and solvency and resilience to meet depositors' demands. And once that determination is made that an institution is insolvent, the Act 930 requires that their license be revoked. After we are satisfied that no other course of action can resolve their insolvency.
Okay. So in outlining why they are insolvent, first you say that the levels of capital held by some savings and loans companies and finance house companies were in violation of the minimum regulatory capital required by Act 930. This made it precarious for these institutions to continue to undertake the business of specialized deposit-taking institutions, given the risk they pose to their depositors and other counterparties to whom they were exposed directly or indirectly. So this would be the new minimum capital that you set for them, that they are unable to meet, not so?
Not necessarily. In the case of the savings and loans subsector, we have not even changed the new minimum capital. This current level of capital that they are required to hold is what is in existence. In fact, going forward, that is one of the reforms that we might undertake in terms of the appropriate levels of capital that they are required to hold. But this has nothing to do with a new level. It was in relation to the banks that we had a new minimum capital requirement that was applied. But this was the existing. Okay. Existing. It's not a new requirement. But even without a new requirement, they were unable to meet the level of capital that they are required to pay.
So is the revocation of their licenses the end of the way or of what you have to do about these entities? Because you also say that they used depositors' funds to finance personal or related party projects. This is supposed to be in breach of the law. What will happen?
True. So as we indicated, as part of the process, in revoking their license, we had to appoint a receiver. The receiver would take over these institutions and review all these transactions. Now, in specific cases where people are found to have used funds to fund related party activities, the receiver would have to pursue them and recover these funds. And if cases of criminality are determined, the right course of action will be undertaken.
Okay. When the banking sector got its share, we was the first to face these measures. We were informed that you were investigating even your own officials and that in due course there will be some prosecution. What's happened to that? It's been over a year.
Yes, something as you're aware, investigations can take a very long while if you want to establish culpability. These processes are still ongoing. They are different stages. There's been a lot of civil cases ongoing. There are some criminal proceedings that have been initiated against certain personalities within that space. That process, we can say, is still ongoing. That notwithstanding, we still need to go ahead and clean up the rest of the system.
Ghanaians were expecting that you'll be faster than we now are, being told, because if you had the evidence to indict the institutions and on the basis of which you collapse them, so to speak, then what other evidence are we looking for? That is taking us over a year.
I think it will be better for you to know that evidence that you would have to determine that a bank is insolvent because it's unable to meet its regulatory requirements and is illiquid to meet depositors' demands are different from evidence that you can use to prosecute criminally. That has to undergo certain forensic processes. Okay. So that has to be carefully done, and we need to separate the two. From our side, we are always interested in the fact that is the bank in good standing? Is it able to fulfill its mandate as prescribed? Is it meeting the depositor's interest? If that is done, then we are okay. So sometimes we need to separate these two processes. And as is generally said, I'm not a lawyer, but it says the wheels of justice grind slowly, but they eventually grind. So let's all have confidence in the processes so that due process will be deemed to have been served.
Is it fair when Ghanaians say the Bank of Ghana is also complicit? Because in these releases, you keep telling us about when you discovered some of these irregularities and outright criminal activities. And some of them, it took you over a year to come to the action you now take to revoke licenses. So are people fair when they say the Bank of Ghana is complicit and that it has not been proactive in this regard?
That's an interesting one. Now, just to throw a little bit of light on some of the processes that we need to go through. And when it comes to banking, just the mere determination that an institution is distressed is not the only grounds we consider in taking the ultimate action of revoking a license. Actually, at various stages of the distress, there are actions that are prescribed. And we can say confidently that we have engaged these institutions throughout these processes. Even when a clear determination is made that an institution is insolvent or is not capable of restoring itself, don't forget that because of the interest of depositors, the process of even revoking the license has to be carefully managed so that we achieve an orderly exit of that institution to safeguard the financial space. So, yes, we've indicated in our own release that we've been having engagements with some of these institutions way back 2017, 2018, because we need to go through various options of giving them the opportunity to recapitalize so that then we can save these institutions. It is having exhausted all these processes and we being assured that these institutions on their own will not be able to sustain these institutions. That is when we would come to that determination of revoking a license. Okay. And that is why it's taking us so long. And don't also forget that we've been doing this in phases. So we've spent some time on the banks, we've spent some time on the microfinance institutions, and it's the same resources that we are committing to these exercises, and they have to be carefully planned. Okay. So this is what has been ongoing for the past 2 years, okay. And this is where we are.
Right. No. A major concern of the depositors or those who have invested funds in these institutions has been how they get their monies.
Yes. In relation to this particular one, yes, how they get their money. In our press statement, we had indicated that the receiver had been appointed, and for this particular set of institutions, the receiver is actually going to undertake a validation process. And that is necessary because of the nature of the problems that we found with these institutions. So a validation process has been commenced. So the receiver has put out guidelines for how these depositors must approach them and file their claims, so that once the validation process is completed and it's established that this receiver, this particular depositor is owed so much, then the receiver will take it from there.
The assurance.
So just urge the public and give them the confidence that this process will be duly followed. So they must follow the instructions of the receiver in this process.
The assurance is that nobody's money will be lost.
I cannot say that 100%, because, and that is why we're carefully saying the receiver must go through a validation process. And we're saying that because of what we've seen with some of these institutions. So we would say that we would allow the receiver to complete his validation process, and then we can come to a determination of whose money will be lost or what is not lost. But the general assurance to depositors is that the receiver will cover them after the validation process has been completed.
Okay. We have known of situations where there has been a liquidation of sort, and what the depositors get in the DKM situation, for example, what the depositors get is solely, what is available. And so the money that is realized as money available is given to them in certain percentages. People have millions lost in the company, but all they get is a few, thousand cedis, because that's all that they can get.
Yes, and once again, I think you can bear me out. For a receivership process, payouts will be determined in the hierarchy of claims that are prescribed. And that is what pertains in the DKM situation. The difference between that and the current ones that we've been doing is that with the cooperation of the government has stepped in to provide some funds, which was targeted at depositors, the vulnerable depositors. Okay, and that is the only thing that has allowed the receiver to sort out these depositors without going through the normal hierarchy that we're supposed to go through. So the government kind of has come in to guarantee for those vulnerable depositors. That's why in our press release we made a distinction between these depositors and other creditors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we have 9 banks, universal banks, whose licenses have been revoked.
True.
347 microfinance companies also licenses revoked.
Yeah.
39 microcredit companies and money lenders gone. 15 savings and loan companies gone. 8 finance house companies also gone. End of the cleanup exercise.
And 2 other institutions.
Yes, non-bank financial institutions, yeah.
The remittance and the leasing companies that were added. In total, close to about 420 institutions, if my math is right.
Yes, so end of the cleanup?
Yes, and that's what has been said, that for the cleanup exercise that we've embarked on, this major one, having done it in sectors, this is the end of that exercise. Going forward, we believe that having taken out this chunk, we would have a cleaner, safer, resilient banking system, which is going to be closely monitored to ensure that this does not happen again.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time. Elliot Amwako, Director Banking Supervision at the Bank of Ghana. Thank you very much for your time this morning.